Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the channel. Welcome to another Gran Turismo 7 race review / opinion piece from this week's daily race C at the Nürburgring Endurance in the Group 3 car. Of course, we've got weather in this one, whether you want to call it dynamic weather, scripted dynamic weather. It's definitely something that plays a big role in this race, at least 50% of the time, possibly closer to about 75% of the time. I've done about 5 of these races and every single one of them has had some weather of some sort, or rain of some sort, and this race that we're looking at here is no exception. We were coming down the back straight there at the end of lap 1. I took a look at the weather radar, thought we were good for another lap on the slick tyres, and around about 3 minutes into that second lap it seems we have made a little bit of a boo-boo, because that weather has came in faster than I expected, and it seems to have caught out a number of drivers as well, because a good number of drivers have stayed out on the slick tyres. So as I discuss this race, in the background is going to just be a case of, can I survive on these hard tyres on a wet track, stay out the way of the people that have already changed, and can we get round and get onto the intermediates ourselves? So as that goes on in the background, let's talk about some other things regarding this race and Gran Turismo 7 in general. Now, you're probably aware that this race has been rather well received by the community and also by the people that do the tube. A lot of the big YouTubers out there have got videos out singing this race's praises, and rightly so. I would say it is one of the best daily races that we have ever had. It's definitely a race which comes across as having had a little bit of time spent on it, testing stuff to sort of cater and fine-tune the settings to all work in conjunction with each other, from the distance of the race of 6 laps, to having the hard tyres available with the wets and the intermediates, to the tyre multiplier kind of just inducing some strategy if the race stays dry, to the fuel usage coming into play, which is actually quite a rare thing for daily race C. And when it all comes together like this, we end up with a very compelling and entertaining race, whether it stays dry or indeed whether that weather comes in. Some of the transitions on the track, from dry to wet, to drying up to then getting wet again, then to drying out towards the end, are absolutely phenomenal. The way the balance of performance of tyre performance can change from lap to lap between the intermediates and the wet tyres just means that you never quite know if you are in a good place or a bad place in the race, and it can just change from sector to sector. I've had a couple of races where I have started the last lap on intermediates and the GP part of the circuit has been drying up. There's a clear dry line to be seen, and I'm thinking I've got a good chance of making up some positions here. And then we get into the Nordschleife part of the track, and obviously the trees don't let the weather or the sun rays get into the track to dry it as quickly, and my intermediates become inferior to the wet tyres on that part of the track. So that kind of ever-changing dynamic of the race is what really just makes things interesting for the full 55 minutes if the weather does happen to play its part. If the race is dry, it's maybe not quite as interesting, but there is definitely some strategy in there, with the no-stop being possible versus the one-stop, and changing the tyres and fuel management and all that sort of thing that comes in a dry race. But yeah, absolutely phenomenal races to be had, and it just, as I said, it seems that the settings have been perfectly tuned, or nearly perfectly tuned, to make things interesting regardless of the circumstances. Another thing definitely worth mentioning about this race and about Gran Turismo 7 is with update 1.50, there was obviously the update to the handling model, and specifically they made mention of changing how the cars drove in the wet, so that driving in the wet is now much more fun and compelling than it previously was. There's a lot more grip out there. It just makes driving in the wet more enjoyable for more people, and it has kind of created this very interesting dynamic where the wet tyres and the intermediate tyres definitely have this kind of battle of what tyre is better in what circumstances. That really wasn't the case quite so much before update 1.50. And also I quite like this fact that even if you make a big mistake like I have here on the slick tyres on a wet track, you still can get the car round, as long as you're very careful on the brakes and don't try and take too many liberties with the throttle. You can gently get the car round, whack that TC up all the way, and you'll get the car round just fine. Losing a lot of time, but at least you're not just spinning around in circles and losing 2, 3 minutes, 5 minutes trying to get the car round. I'm only 15 seconds off the lead here, and the driver in P1 has changed to intermediates. So I do like this fact that you are not completely ruined if you find yourself on the wrong tyres, albeit slick tyres on a wet track, intermediate tyres on a dry track, wet tyres on a drying track. You're not going to be as fast as the best tyre to be on, of course, but your race isn't completely and utterly shredded. You can also just then try and hold on, and hopefully maybe the track comes towards the tyre that you find yourself on. So we had been doing a pretty good job there, to be honest with you, getting the car round on the slick tyres. We were just letting the intermediate runners who had already changed at the end of lap 1 through. We were getting pretty close to the end of the lap. Unfortunately, a little bit of a miscommunication between me and another driver resulted in us being rear-ended and spun round. Just a kind of circumstance of the track, and me being on a fast part of the track on the wrong tyre, and Fatalist Chris went into the back of us and spun us round. They apologise here in the chat, they apologise at the end of the race as well. It's all good, it's one of these things that happened. As I said, slow car, wrong tyres on a fast part of the track. I was trying my very best to stay off the racing line, but it's just one of these things. So the point I really kind of want to highlight in this video is essentially that this is how easy it is to win for Polyphony Digital. This is a very good race, it's been very well thought out, but there's nothing rocket science about it. It is just clearly somebody has spent a little bit of time just making sure that all the settings are working in conjunction with each other, and this is the result. People will race, people will say nice things about the game, and it must be in stark contrast to what was going on last week, because with just Daily Race B being at Suzuka, and I'll be honest with you, and I don't mean to upset anybody that does Daily Race B, nobody's really that interested in it. When Gran Turismo has a bad Daily Race C and there's no GTWS going on, the game becomes a bit of a ghost town. And that's what happened last week with the RA272 at Eiger Norwand. Had that race been 15 laps, people might have been a little bit more enthused, but it still would never have been a popular race. But this is how easy it is for PD to get a win. Just make sure that your Daily Race C has got everything in place, spend a little bit of time, get the settings correct. It doesn't mean it has to be a 55-minute race with dynamic weather every week, no, not at all. Personally, I would rather that this was a kind of sort of like a special feature race that maybe went on a couple of times a day, 3 times, 4 times a day, and ran in conjunction with a more traditional Daily Race C. If you really want to win big, PD, that's what to do. Give us a Daily Race D, which is more catered to this race that we've got this week for Daily Race C, and run it in conjunction with a traditional Daily Race C of 20 minutes every half an hour. We've got the tyre wear model in there now to make strategy much more interesting than it has been for a while, and you will win every single time, PD. It really is that easy. But that's all I've got to say about this one. We managed to recover to 4th place in this one. Another good feature of this race is it being the length it is means you can recover from a bad decision like we made on lap 1. So let me know what you think about what I've had to say in this video in the comments, and no, you're not ever going to change my mind that Daily Race B in general is pointless. But I appreciate you watching, folks, and I'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye now.